The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Let's stare into the night sky. Dylan Storey, of course, with the help of Stardome Observatory in Auckland City. G'day there, Dylan.
G'day.
And today we're talking about a moon and the possibility of an underground sea.
Yeah, well, I just stumbled across this story that the Cassini probe, which is in orbit around Saturn, has got a new finding from one of the moons of Saturn called Enceladus, that it's actually discovered salt grains in the plumes that come out of it. Now, just a bit of background: Enceladus is a small moon orbiting Saturn reasonably close, and it's been known for a while that there are these sort of plumes or geysers or liquids spurting out of it. And so it's been speculated that Saturn is so far away from the Sun and the moons are that scientists would ask the question, how could there be a liquid this far out in the solar system when even water would be frozen harder than rock?
Yeah.
And so the answer, that the most probable cause, is that it's actually caused by heat generated from within the moon by interactions with the gravity of Saturn. So Saturn's gravity and the other moons possibly are pushing and pulling this inner moon, generating heat inside, so we've got a lot of geothermal activity. And the moon is made largely of ice, it's water ice, mainly. And so below the frozen surface there is a layer where the temperature is warm enough to make the ice liquid, but not warm enough to boil it, so to speak. So the hypothesis is that there's an underground sea on this moon, and also some of the moons of Jupiter are candidates for this too. So the Cassini space probe in 2008-2009 flew through one of these plumes, one of these liquid spurts coming out of Enceladus, and it kind of gives you an idea of how long things take, how much data there is coming in from the space probes.
Yeah.
It's taken 2 to 3 years to process the data to actually discover that evidence of salt. So this is building a stronger case for the possibility of that underground ocean existing. That's also saying that it's probably salt water, and that strengthens the case for the possibility of life under the ice of some of these outer solar system moons.
So because of course that's how life started here on Earth, in the oceans, in a salty ocean.
In the oceans, and prior to the mid-90s, around about the mid-90s, it was thought that one of the vital ingredients in life here on Earth was sunlight. Until they discovered this life at the volcanic trenches in the Atlantic Trench, where there's absolutely no sunlight getting, but you've got these little volcanic bubbles coming up, so sources of heat.
Yeah.
And so, and there was this life. There's this very simple life, but life nevertheless. So, all it really needs, it seems, would be water, salt, and some source of heat. Now, those are the conditions that are probably exist in these underground seas on the outer solar system moons. So could there be life there? We don't know.
Could we, if there was life, could we speculate of what sort of life it would be? Would it be bacteria, or would it be a formed creature?
Well, if you go by the life that's around the Atlantic trenches, it's sort of, they are creatures. They're not just sort of bacteria, but they're very strange. They're very different from surface animals, and they're very simple. They're just tiny little things that sort of jet around and absorb food. I'm not really too sure, but it's definitely very simple life. Yeah. But there also is the question that some people ask of whether life could have actually started, whether life could actually have kicked off in those situations, or whether it can just adapt from the certain primordial soup that existed on the surface billions of years ago. So that's another thing to question.
So are they going to investigate further, or how can they find out about this underground sea?
Well, Cassini is this large probe. It's about the size of a small bus. It's been in orbit around Saturn for about 9 years now, and so Cassini will continue doing flybys. But to actually get to the moon and to land on it would be an incredible task. It would take millions and millions of dollars and decades. But then we'd have the problem of basically an unknown thickness of ice on these moons. I mean, a better place to go rather than Enceladus would be some of the moons of Jupiter, which are also likely candidates, like Europa and Ganymede. But we could be talking about many, many kilometres of ice before the underground sea, and we would barely possess the technology to drill through that on Earth, rather than get this equipment out to a remote moon. So,
so maybe
you could say that any sort of
should we just nuke it? Send a big warhead, blow it apart, see what comes out.
See what comes out. Yeah, could do. You could. I'll forward that suggestion to NASA.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can say directly exploring these things is probably not. It's not just around the corner. So we're left to speculate from observational evidence, you could say. But it's an exciting field to be studying. Possibility of life existing in different places, even within our solar system.
Yeah, absolutely. And a fascinating place to go and discover more of this kind of stuff, of course, is the Auckland Stardom Observatory. What's on at the moment?
There's a space room talk which happens after the shows. That's where the presenter takes you into another room and there's a talk on the topic of the month. And this month we're actually doing moons. So there will be a lengthy discussion about the moons of the solar system. When I say lengthy, we try and keep it to about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes, including question time.
Yeah.
The weather's variable, of course, but when it's clear, it tends to be nice and clear, so we're getting a good view of the planets and stuff.
Yeah, last night in Auckland City would have been a good night for that. It was nice and crisp and clear. So.
Apparently it was. Someone from the Stardome was talking to me and said, yeah, it was good viewing.
And said, "Oh, you missed a good one there. You missed a good one there, Dylan." Yeah, all right.
Yeah, that's what they said.
Check out Dylan on Twitter. You can continue the conversation there, twitter.com/Dylan Storey. Of course, you can also pop along to the Auckland Stardome. Thanks, Dylan. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Wammo.